What is up? I am out here in Singapore, and today I'm going to tell you why, if you're coming to Asia for the first time, you should avoid Singapore and go to almost any other country in Asia. Alright, I have to start out this video with a disclaimer. This is my personal opinion, and this is based on my experiences living and traveling in Asia. This video is intended primarily for people visiting Asia for the first or maybe the second time that haven't been here very much, so that's the primary purpose of this video. Singapore is by no means the worst country that I've been to, not at all. It's not terrible, but I'm gonna explain to you why out of all the countries in Asia, I think Singapore should be almost last on your list. Based on my experience and what I've learned, Singapore is not the utopia that many people portray it to be. Actually, a lot of the things that people say about Singapore can be very misleading. After being here for a while and talking to people and doing research, I found out some things about this country, so let's dig into the reasons why I think a lot of the things that people big up about Singapore are not so special. The first thing is cleanliness. Singapore is often talked about as being very clean, and it is certainly not dirty. But in my experience, Japan is cleaner, and this is not one of the reasons that you should come here. If you're coming to visit Asia, in my opinion, your intention should not be to stay in your comfort zone. So the cleanliness of Singapore, while not necessarily being false, should not be a reason that you come here. The next thing that I want to talk about is Singlish, or Singaporean English. Now, even though English is one of the 4 official languages here in Singapore, it can be really difficult to understand people. They speak English really fast and they kind of slur their words together. So a lot of times it takes me a while, a few seconds after they're done speaking to comprehend what they're saying, and a few times I couldn't even understand and had to get them to repeat themselves. And we've even encountered some people working in restaurants that couldn't speak English altogether. But still, English is common here, even though it's a slanted version of English. However, just like the last point, I don't think staying in your comfort zone with English should be a reason that you come here. The next thing about Singapore is malls. There are shopping malls everywhere in Singapore. Singapore must have the highest concentration of malls in any city in the world. They even have malls connected to malls connected to malls and a never-ending labyrinth of consumerism. If this is your thing, shopping for designer brands, and that's what you want to do, then Singapore is going to be heaven for you. If you're not into big shopping malls, then half of Singapore is not for you. Alright, the next point I want to talk about is public transportation. And the public transportation in Singapore is not bad. When you compare it to other countries, especially Japan or even Thailand, it's not that special. A lot of people tout that you can just swipe your regular credit card to get on the subway here, but you can do the same thing in Thailand in the subway. Also, I was not really impressed with the cleanliness of the subway here in Singapore. I mean, it's not super dirty, but even the trains in Thailand are cleaner than the ones here in Singapore. And if you compare the public transportation in Singapore to that of Japan, there's no comparison. Japan has the best train system in the world. So yeah, public transportation is good here in Singapore, but it's not that revolutionary either. The next thing about Singapore is the weather. It is so hot and humid here. Man, if you have to walk outside for more than a few minutes, you're probably gonna be sweating. If you're gonna go somewhere where you have to suffer this kind of oppressive heat and humidity, go to Thailand. Next thing I want to talk about is safety. And yes, Singapore is technically the safest country in Asia. So that is true. But Japan is almost as safe statistically as Singapore, and I would much recommend Japan over Singapore, especially for the value, which we'll get to soon. But yeah, Singapore is safe, but you're pretty much going to be safe in a lot of the countries in Asia that I recommend you visit, particularly Japan and Thailand. So Singapore is safe, but once again, staying in your comfort zone is not a reason to travel to Asia. Another reason to stay out of Singapore is the crowds. There are massive crowds of people all the time, especially at the popular destinations. On the weekdays, you can kind of get a break a bit, but man, if you want to go anywhere remotely popular on the weekends, there's gonna be tons of people. This can make things really uncomfortable and take away a lot of the enjoyment if you don't like massive crowds of people. One big downside of Singapore to me is a lack of creativity. This is a very conformist culture, so creativity is not promoted here. And you can feel this. Most of the sites just feel like big theme parks. I mean, you look at Marina Bay Sands, Merlion, even the aquarium in the zoo. It's all very fabricated. The super trees, which are fake trees. It's like everything is like a theme park. It's all commercial and fabricated. There doesn't really feel like there's any art coming from the people on the ground here. Even in a similarly conformist Asian culture that's really traditional like Japan, you have big creative cultural exports like anime that they've blown up to the entire world and that's extremely popular. You don't have that kind of thing coming out of Singapore. It's really dull. I mean, I hate to say it, but Singapore is boring. Now, I'm from Orlando, Florida, which is one of the theme park capitals of the world. So I grew up going to theme parks. So that kind of thing doesn't really impress me much anymore. If you're looking to go to theme parks and have that kind of vibe, maybe you're coming here with your family, with young children, then Singapore's for you. If you're not looking to go to theme parks in Asia, then stay away from Singapore. The whole country feels like a theme park. Another downside of Singapore is that it is expensive. It is so expensive, it makes me want to cry. You eat at a restaurant and it's like $50 or $60, and then, you know, people will say, oh, that's not where the locals eat, you're eating at really expensive places, when it's just like a burger place or some casual dining place. And it's like, I don't want to eat street food for every meal just to be able to afford to be in Singapore. It's really ridiculous. And then if you look at the price of hotel rooms, oh my God, it is obnoxiously expensive here. And this is the crux of why I think you should stay away from Singapore. The value and the ROI is just not there. Your money is gonna go so much further in most other countries in Asia. I mean, even somewhere like Japan, which is not cheap, your money's gonna go so much further and you're gonna get a deeper cultural experience, in my opinion. So this is the big reason that you should stay away from Singapore. It is so freaking expensive. There are only two situations where I recommend that you come to Singapore. Number one is if you're traveling with a family with young children. If you got kids that are too young to appreciate culture yet, then you could come to Singapore and you could visit the theme parks and you can have this really sanitized experience that's safe and that your kids will appreciate. That's the first situation. The second situation is if you yourself are really sensitive, you got a sensitive stomach, or you're just sensitive as a person, you could come to Singapore to get a somewhat sanitized experience of Chinese culture or Indian culture without going to China or India. Other than that, if you want to experience Chinese culture, go to China. If you want to experience Indian culture, go to India. In particular, if it's your first time coming to Asia, I recommend that you have Japan and Thailand on your itinerary. You can visit a third and maybe a fourth country if you want to, like Vietnam I also love. But yeah, check out Japan. Check out Thailand. Singapore should not be near the top of your list, because when it comes down to value for your money when traveling in Asia, almost any other country is gonna beat out Singapore. The value is just not here, in my opinion. So aside from the financial aspect, Singapore just seems really boring. I mean, the whole place just seems like a commercial theme park. If you're looking to go to a theme park in Asia, then you'll love Singapore, but I'm not looking to go to theme parks in Asia. I want to experience some deep culture. Not to say that there isn't culture to be found in Singapore, there certainly is, but I would rather go and immerse in a more monoculture like in Japan or Thailand or Vietnam, and go deep into that culture. I mean, in Singapore, it feels like you can kind of get a sampling of different cultures, not to disrespect those cultures at all, not at all. But when you combine these two factors of Singapore being pretty boring and also the extremely high prices of everything, it's just not worth it. You'd be better off going to these other countries and experiencing the cultures in their native land. All right, so I debated with myself a lot on whether to make this video. Debated with myself a lot? Some of you OGs that have traveled a lot in Asia and been to Singapore might know what I'm talking about. Please back me up in the comments, because I'm sure there's also a lot of you that disagree with some of the things that I've said. Please also let me know where I'm wrong here, but this is just my personal opinion once again. The main reason why in the end I decided to go ahead and make this video is because I couldn't find anyone else on YouTube giving a different perspective and talking about these things like this. Usually all the videos about Singapore on YouTube are the same old tourist spots, Marina Bay Sands, Garden by the Bay, botanical gardens, and then they call it a day. So that's why I decided to make this video. Those of you who love Singapore and those of you who live in Singapore, it really was not my intention to be offensive here. I was just giving my experience about Singapore and giving an alternate perspective. I want to try to inform people that are coming to Asia for the first time and kind of give them my perspective on things. So yeah, please don't take too much offense to what I've said if you love Singapore and if you live in Singapore and like it.
A few moments later.
Oh my God, it is so hot. It is brutally hot. Oh yeah, and another thing that I didn't have on my list that I just remembered is that if you are a couple traveling here, this is such a conservative culture that public displays of affection are very frowned upon. So you're not even supposed to kiss in public, and I really don't even see people holding hands or cuddling. That might be a downside for you too. I mean, I've even been getting the stink eye a lot just going around town and filming this. Anything that makes you stand out or stick out is frowned upon here in Singapore. Oh look, it's the merlion, let's take a picture! Another reason to stay away from Singapore is if you're really looking to party. The partying here in Singapore seems very sanitized and PG rated. I mean, I live in Bangkok, Thailand, so I'm used to kind of some of the most rowdy partying in any city in the world. Everything other than alcohol and tobacco is highly illegal here in Singapore, and so don't even mess with any of that. Furthermore, a lot of the bars and clubs close very early. So I have seen a lot of regular just drinking and smoking cigarettes, of course, but the partying here does not seem that rowdy, and it just seems boring. All right, there you go. That's why I think you should stay away from Singapore. Let me know if you're gonna stay away or if you're still gonna come visit Singapore. Put it in the comments below. See you next time as we continue the legend of Sir William Elliott. That's me! Look, it's the Marina Bay Sands! Woohoo! Let's take a picture! See you next time. Peace.